Photojournalism is something that interested me for a long time, but the big question is, how do you get assignments? How do you get published? Last week, I decided creating working around photojournalism for Easter. If you don't know me, most of my work is focused on street photography or documentary photography, which can be pretty close to, but photojournalism sometimes you need to shoot a little bit different. To be honest, I feel like traditional news sometimes can be a little bit boring. I do understand that. I feel like to create photographs for the news, you have to create something that is easier for your viewer to watch. It needs to be simple to read, which sometimes in street photography is a little bit different. Because I wanted to create something to send to papers and to send to news, I had to be a little bit faster on that weekend, so I decided to shoot digital. I used my Sony a7C for that, which I'm recording right now, and I used two lenses on that day. I used my Sony 16-35 Zeiss lens. This is a f4 lens, and I also use the small 50 lens from Sony. That's a 52.5. They're like quite nice focal lengths, and because I'm using the Sony a7C, I also can use crop mode on the camera, which give me a little bit more of a reach. I wish I had a 70-200, but that's not the case at the moment. Before we continue, I just want to give you a little bit of context what Easter represents here in the north of Ireland. Easter here is not just a holiday, it's a moment of remembrance. It goes back to the Easter Rising in 1916 when Irish republics tried to end British rule. Many people involved were executed, and since then Easter became a time for remembrance. In Belfast, especially West Belfast, those commemorations are still very present. There are parades, gatherings, speeches, and people coming together to express history, but also to express what they still believe today. And that's where it gets interesting, because it's not just an event. You're photographing something political, something that has a meaning for those people, something that is still emotionally alive. Because I was approaching this as a photojournalist, I had to cover several different types of shots, and I was covering shots from wide shot, mid shot, and tight shot. I think this is very important when you're doing journalism. I'll give you some examples. This is a shot that I took during Glornahoghly commemoration at Milltown Cemetery. This is a very boring shot for me, but I think does give an idea of where we are and what's happening at this location. And I think for news, this is very important. Mid shot's one of my favorites. I think that's where I'm most used to work with it, because I think I do so much street photography and documentary photography. I'm very used to getting close to people, and I really like to work with wider lenses. So I really like the dynamic that using a wider lens creates and how close I can get to my subject. This is an example about a mid shot. I really like the photograph because there are so many hands in it. This photograph could also use as a street photography or documentary photography, but I do believe that you can use this photograph for news as well. It's just, when I say I could use for street photography, it's just because there are so many hands on this photograph. When I look to this photograph, I think about hands, but I also give a context on a more simpler way. If you're just showing this on the papers, people will understand that this was during Easter, during the commemorations here in Belfast. But I think this photograph, I'm really happy with it. It is a simple frame, but it's just the fact that I have so many hands, there is something special to me. Tight shots is where you can go a little bit more specific, is where you can show more detail, where you can go a little bit deeper. I'm gonna give you another example. So in this photograph, I want to have his patch showing on the photograph. This was the Workers' Party commemoration, and I think it's just a nice photograph with the color and showing a little bit of the patch. This can also be used for news, and you can give a little bit of a symbolism. Why is he using his patch? Who is he? Who he represents on that day? I'll give you another example about a tight shot, but that I can give a little bit of more context. It could maybe be a mid shot for some people, but this is almost like a portrait. This was the speech from Glornahoghly. I got really close to him. You can clearly see he's very uncomfortable in the photograph, but I feel like that gives the photograph a little bit of a magic. You can see his face. He's clearly uncomfortable, and you can also see a bit of context in the background. So I think this photograph can represent what is happening, but can also represent how he's feeling. I think also represents how I was feeling, because To make those shots, I have to go a little bit out of my comfort zone and get really close to my subject. I'm used to it because I do it all the time, but it always feels a little bit awkward when you're close to someone and you know that they don't really want to be photographed that close. I shot during 2 days. During those 2 days, what I try to do on both days, I try to get there very early. I think sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. I didn't even have the proper location that I have to be on the first 2 days. In the first day, I left my house an hour before the event. And when I got there, there was no one at Milltown Cemetery. And then I start asking people, where do they think they're gonna start? And they told me it was gonna be a little bit farther from there. So I hopped on the bus, went to that place. I got there, they told me it was a little bit farther again. I got to the second location. And when I was there, people were like, look, the parade is tomorrow. And then I realized they're talking about the parade on Sunday, but I was looking for the events on Saturday. So I called a friend and he was like, hey, look, go back to the cemetery. I think that's where they're gonna start. So I just got the bus back, got all the way back, but because I had all this time, and Belfast is small, everything was happening in West Belfast, it was quite easy to go like back and forward. So I just got back to the cemetery. I still got back there a little bit earlier, which was great. So I just start introducing myself to the people. I just start saying hello to people and start photographing. There was also a photographer there. I said hello to him, and then I started noticing there was this woman kind of organizing everyone. There was the Workers' Party commemoration, and I was like, okay, maybe she is the organizer of that event. So I just walked to her and I introduced myself. I say, hi Lucas, I'm a photographer. I'm just taking photographs of the event. If you want, I can send them to you. So I got her email and I ended up sending those photos for her later in the day. I think when you're early and if you have the opportunity, I feel like not every event you can go there and introduce yourself. Sometimes you're documenting something that is a little bit more intense, that's a little bit harder to go there and be like, hi, I'm this guy, I'm going to be photographing. Sometimes people are like, no, I don't want to be photographed. You know, but I felt like because this was a light event, it was more like a family event, it was a commemoration, that you didn't mind. By doing this, I felt like people were starting to get used to me, and they also saw like, okay, this guy's friendly. He's coming to us, he's talking to us. He's not just like someone that we don't know that's coming here to make us look bad. We don't know what he's doing. So people were very friendly with me, and that made me get really, really close to people without fearing that I was being annoying, without like making like a weird situation. So that was really good to start producing work. I document this whole event, and then after that finish, I could see that Hogley was already starting to walk into the cemetery. So I had to rush there. This was a little bit of different vibes because I wasn't there early. I couldn't really have a sense for how could I shoot this event, but I felt like because I was already warmed up from the first event, it was easy enough to start getting in the flow again. This looked a little bit more serious because they were dressed as military, so I wasn't really sure how close I could get to people at the start, but I was like, hey look, I'm here to make work. I need to get close no matter what. So I start getting really close to people and doing like those photographs. That's where I took the photograph that I talked before with the guy's face here. I was getting really close. I was also trying to produce work that I consider to be press work, but I wanted to mix a little bit of my style. So I ended up getting some shots that could be documentary photography, could be street photography, but I feel like maybe some press, if they're a little bit modern, they could also use those photographs. I stayed at Hogley until the end of their commemoration as well. At the end, I saw a group of photographers and I was building my confidence because I feel like one of the most important things sometimes in this field, when you're a photographer, when you're doing news, when you're doing work, you need to know other photographers. Those people gonna help you in future. So I built my confidence and I start walking to this group. There were like 4 people and I was like, fuck, I want to say hi, but I'm so nervous. But I did it anyway. I went there and I was like, hi, I'm Lucas. I'm a photographer, just moved here to Belfast. I just want to say hello to the photographers around here, just to make connections, just to make friends. And they were completely lovely. It was amazing. I was really happy and proud, let's say, that I came to those people and I made those connections. I think is extremely important for me at the moment to make connections. I think network is the biggest thing at the moment. Another thing that happened, because I stayed until the end, I ended up meeting one of their organizers too and ended up chatting with him and creating another connection. As a documentarian, for me, those connections are really important because you never know who you want to photograph in the future, who you want to create a project around it. And this is one of the things that like I'm always trying to make. I'm always trying to meet new people. I'm always trying to think about projects as well when I think about my personal level in photography. After the event finished, I run home. I had to get those photos ready as quick as possible. So I came home, threw everything on my computer, and then I put everything on Lightroom and I start cleaning everything. I do the first cleaning, and then I do a second cleaning, and then I do a third cleaning, which means I'll have the photos that I kinda like. They're not all my picks yet, but I ended up with maybe like 80 to 60 photos per event by that time. And then I added one of the photos that I think is good. I copy and paste on every other photos, and then I just make a small tweak. So then I can have the same colors on each photo. It just makes the work looks a little bit more cohesive. And after I finish editing everything from each event, I go and then I select my peaks. I usually select 20 to 30 photos per event. Another thing that I did a few days before, I got the contact of some people that work with press. So I was looking for editors, I was looking for photo editors that works in news here in Belfast, and I was looking for their email. I was gonna cold call them, so I need this information to send them those photographs straight away after the event. I wasn't expecting them to publish any of my photographs. First, because they don't know me, that was my first time reaching out to them. And secondly, because they probably have someone already in the field working for them. I could see a lot of press on both events, so I know those guys were working for someone already. I wanted to send these emails just to introduce myself. So basically, I create an email where I send them 3 to 5 photographs, always thinking about wide, mid, and tight shot to show what I got on that day. And I say like, look, those are a few photographs that I took on this day. I'm that person, I do that work. I send my website, send my Instagram, and I also told them, if you're happy, I can send you a final selection of the photographs I took on that day. I don't know where this is gonna lead, but I think that's a good start on showing people who you are, on showing people what you can do. Because this is a fresh event, they'll have another photographs to compare with other photographers that are working on the day. So they'll have a different eye to look in those photographs. I do think a lot of people are shooting the same thing, but I think we all have different eyes. We all think different. We all come from a different school when it comes to photography. The second day, I did the same thing. I left my house an hour earlier, and this time I was lucky. I went straight away to the start of the parade. And because I was there early again, I start kind of saying hello to a few people. I ended up meeting one of the organizers again. I think it's always, if you have a chance, introduce yourself. That's a very important thing. It's nice when people know who you are. It's nice when people see that you're being friendly, that you're not showing there, putting your camera in their faces, because it can be quite rude or quite annoying if you're just showing up, putting a camera at someone and not really looking at them, because you're going to be at this event for like 2-3 hours. So if those people are feeling comfortable already, if your face is already like, they've seen your face a few times, they'll be like, okay, this guy's been around here, so that's all right. So I think it's very important. Always try to make this connection if you can. Usually as a street photographer, I try to focus on the people that are watching the parade. But because I was sending those photographs to press, I was trying to focus a lot on the parade. Of course, I did take some shots of the crowds around it, because news sometimes they want to see that too. They don't want photographs only of the parade. But it was started to feel quite hard to produce work on the second day. I don't know if it's because on the first day I shot a lot as well. On the second day, I was trying to go to the start of the parade, the back of the parade. It was a little bit different because on the first day, they were all at the cemetery already. On the second day, they made this parade. They were walking all the way to the start of the cemetery and then doing their commemoration there. So I was trying to go to the front, go to the back. It was quite tiring, but that's part of the job. I just try to keep my head relax and try to think, what else can I make here? What can I make different today? I think that's the hardest part as a photographer. How do you produce work of a very similar thing? How do you show a different view of what you're seeing on that day? If you take like 1,000 photographs, they start to look very repetitive, and you have to make a way of making them look different. I think that's the magic in photography. That's the challenge. And again, on the second day, I stayed to the end. I photographed all their speeches. I showed everything. I wanted to have a cover of the whole thing from the start to the end. I was there for around 4 hours, and then I went straight back home again I had to edit again one more time very fast. I think when you're working with the news, sometimes there are two things that bother me a little bit. You have to work really fast and you have to deliver those photos as quick as you can. I've seen press photographers go into events, they bring their laptop and then they literally just like finish photographing, throw it on the laptop and start editing right there, sometimes even on the floor, you know. And that's a thing that I don't like very much, but I understand that's part of the job. I think I enjoy much more taking the photographs than getting them ready fast. I think when you do work really fast, you can't really produce your best work when you're making everything too quickly. Another thing that bothers me is I am a political person. I believe in some things. And I think when you send your photograph to a newspaper, a lot of the time they will use your photograph, but they will put their own words and they can get this event and translate in their own way. It is really easy to get a photograph and turn in something different. So it was really hard to me to think of which paper I wanted to approach. Because I'm starting, I feel like I have to approach every paper in my city because I need to work, I need to get into it, I want to be published. But it's still really tough. I remember thinking a lot about it, like I don't want to send those photographs to this paper because they're gonna use those photographs in a different way than I believe. They're gonna use words that I don't really agree. And I did saw a lot of words used on that news on that day. They were really aggressive, that they were really bad, and I don't really agree with some of the wording on those news. So you just have to have this in your mind. Your photograph's gonna be in this news and they're gonna say whatever they wanna say. And I do think that's really hard for me, but I'm trying to make peace with it at the start. Because I'm just starting, I need to start, I need to publish, I need to get a press pass. And to get a press pass, I need to have photographs out there. But sometimes you have to give your photographs to some people that you don't really agree with them, and that's really hard to me. I was really glad I did these photographs. They are a little bit different to my usual work, but I learned a lot during that weekend. I think when you're a working photographer, you cannot always do photographs the way you want, but you have to do in a way that you meet in the middle. I think if I can meet in the middle, that's a good thing to me. I did do some photographs that were more on my style because I feel like even if you're shooting for press, you have to put your own style on it. You have your own eye no matter what. It's still a part of creativity. You can't just think about the papers. You can't just think about what's selling it. I hope this video helped you to have a little understanding about photojournalism, or at least the start of it. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, or you can also send me a DM. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take photos every day.